You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Hello, I'm Steven Willis with the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. He's Derek Vandygriff with Ole Miss After Dark. He's got the hat on for this broadcast as well. And before we get started, I do want to let everybody know that we are launching the Ole Miss Locked On Ole Miss Insiders program. And what that is a texting service where you basically sign up to be notified of anything relevant that is going on around Ole Miss sports. We shoot it to you. We shoot up schedules whenever we're doing videos. A couple of nuggets went up today about Caleb Cunningham and about Dylan Alfred. It's a pretty good way to do it. There's a 14-day free trial, and after that, it's $5 per month, really $4.99. But I think it's a good thing, and it's probably the easiest way to follow Ole Miss sports out there. No message boards to deal with trolls, no searching through articles to find out relevant stuff because everybody's clickbait, click-based. So I think it's pretty good, Derek.
Yeah, it is. You had this going, what was it, last year before, stuff like that. I want to say 2 years ago was kind of like more of the trial run period of it. Do I have that timeline right? Something like that?
Something like that,
yeah. And it was really helpful information. Had a guy on your Discord, by the way, if you haven't joined the Locked On Discord. That's another good place to get a lot of good information from Steven. He was asking kind of what you would get out of it, kind of what it means, go into a little more detail. The example I used was when Hunter Elliott got hurt a couple years ago, shut him down at the beginning of the year after that start against Delaware. Didn't know if he was going to be making another start, having Tommy John, whatever it was. Turns out he was starting against LSU later on in the year. Now he only went, one inning or whatever it was that start. But through that subtext only, those members got the information that Hunter Elliott was starting that LSU game. Those were the only people that got it, and they were the very first to know about it. Nobody else reported it, said anything about it. Steven's subtext group there in that community was the very first to put that out, and it was dead on the money. So that's kind of what you're getting with this. You get a lot of good information, videos, a little bit of news when we're able to get it, stuff like that. So if you're interested in that, go sign up for it because it is a really cool thing that I haven't seen anybody else do besides you, Steven.
Yeah, and the whole thing is I want Ole Miss sports and following Ole Miss to be fun, and there's nothing more fun than easy. If it's easy, it's going to be more fun, and this is about as easy as it gets, honestly.
Yeah, it is. It is.
But I'm trying to work it out to where like you and Hitch and Tom Vanderford, everybody has access to post. If they come across some information, they can put out their little subtext text to everybody with this, like, hey, this is coming from Tom, this is coming from Derek, this is coming from Hitch, whatever. That is my goal. So we're about to find out. I'm in conversations, I guess, in negotiations with my managers.
I got you. Yeah, that would be a lot of fun. And kind of like I said, it just comes right across your phone too, in a text message style, right? So it couldn't be any easier than that. You don't have to have internet access to get to it or anything. It comes directly to your phone. You read it, whatever little snippet it is, whether it be the video, the news, like you talked about. So it's a really cool idea, and really excited you're getting that going again.
Yeah, I'm looking for it. Locked On kind of hounded me to do it. They're kind of making me do it. But if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it better than anybody else. That's right. Kind of the way I look at it.
Always do, just like the podcast.
Yes, fall camp is getting ready to start. We're probably a little bit under a week away from the start of fall camp. And what stories are you going to be watching for this fall?
Yeah, look, I think one of the big ones is what kind of group are you going to see up front on the offensive line, right? We got a lot of dudes up there, several transfers that have come in. Me and Hitch talked about it a little bit earlier in the week, and you got Diego Pounds, the two kids from Washington, Scott from Southern Miss, and then you've got returners like James and Caleb Warren, right? Michael Pettis is obviously going to be a starter out there, but you also got Williams at the other tackle. Where does he land at? Is he more of a swing guy for depth? I'm really interested to see how the offensive line shakes out. Either way, whoever ends up starting, whatever 5 guys they go with, I think it's a really, really deep unit, and that's only going to benefit Ole Miss with the way that they like to run tempo, hurry up, run as many plays as you can in a ball game. You need those offensive linemen to stay fresh, and now we've got quality bodies to be able to do that for 4 quarters, where in the past couple years you could tell those guys were getting a little bit gassed as the year went on because they were playing so much. I don't think that's going to be as much of an issue this year. And I think right on the other side of the line too, defensive line, you got a lot of bodies there too. Interested to see how that shakes out. Linebackers, I'm really excited about linebackers this year, Steve, and I feel like we've got a ton of dudes back there. TJ Dotery, formerly Dudley, changed his last name. Really excited to see him. Thought he really came on last year in the bowl game, showed some flashes there. So I'm excited to see him. Suntarine Perkins making that year-to-year jump. He was great at just going and getting the ball last year. When they told him to go get the ball, he was great at it. So he's a year older, more experienced, ready to see what he's got. Raymond, I'm losing Collins, there you go. Yeah, the JUCO kid, number 1 JUCO linebacker, seems to be a really good player too. We've got guys all over the field on that side of the ball. So really interested to see how all that shakes out, and the wide receiver room too, right? Everybody's talking about how deep and how good this receiver room is, especially if you add Deion Smith into it. And it sounds like, from everything I've read, that that's probably going to be the case. He is going to be in that wide receivers room. Super talented guy. You add him to Juice Wells and Trey Harris, Jordan Watkins. Caden Lee's a guy that I think can really be good for us this year. Incredible speed. I kind of struggle to say sneaky because I don't really think it's that sneaky when you watch it. I just think maybe when you probably didn't expect him to be as fast as he is. He's incredibly athletic, and if he ever gets past the first guy, he's a candidate to take it all the way to the house with his speed. So a lot of things to be watching for there. And then maybe even the number 2 string quarterback battle, right? Because that's going to set up for a huge storyline next year, which I'm not looking ahead. I'm not trying to rush through this football season as great as it's going to be.
Yeah, please don't.
Yeah. But, you got Walker Howard and Austin Simmons, a couple of really great players there, along with Anthony Maddox, the freshman too. So they've done a really good job of just creating so much depth on this team that I don't think I've ever seen in my lifetime. So that's just really exciting to see all of these guys get an opportunity.
Yeah, when it comes to roster building, I mean, Lane Kiffin really deserves a ton of credit.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like Ole Miss fans just woke up and this was a completely different looking football team than anything that we've seen in the last 35 years. And it's not like, it didn't feel like we were doing anything really differently. I mean, you look down the high school recruiting classes, they were okay. I mean, they did well top end and did stuff like that, but they were okay. And then you look at the transfer portal and it's like, hey, they're pretty highly ranked every year. But if you look down at it, there's 10 offensive linemen that can play. You got defensive linemen that can go 3 deep. You got 6 linebackers. You look at all the transfers going back in the defensive back room. You are stacked at least 4 deep in the quarterback room, 5 deep in the right. I mean, it goes on and on and on.
Yeah, it really does. And look, that's what you got to have to win at this level in this conference, right? We've seen it over and over and over again. We've had a lot of really good talent come through Ole Miss. We just haven't had the depth to stand up to an entire season of it, to be able to compete at the level that I expect, I know you expect, and most of the fans expect us to do this year. It's kind of funny to think about. Like you would almost be disappointed. I say almost. I know I would be disappointed with anything less than a playoff berth this coming up year with the way this roster is constructed. And that's all the credit to Lane Kiffin, the staff. He's done such a good job of creating this huge staff too, right? Where there's not, a ton of responsibilities on one single person. He's able to divvy it out across the board. He's done a great job with the analysts too. Really the Saban method there, former head coaches, bring them in, get them into your building, work with these guys. So he's just done a really great job with that, and he's built one hell of a roster here in Oxford. And these guys are really, really going to get after it October or August 31st. We get us an August game this year.
Yeah, it should be pretty really pretty good. And like I said, we're probably next Wednesday, next Thursday away from the first acclimation practices, and fall camp should be a ton of fun. Now it should, hopefully it goes to chalk and it's predictable and there's nothing surprising that goes on. But if it does, we have people in and around Oxford, and if they open up and have open scrimmages and all that, they'll be able to see what's going on, and we can use the Locked On Ole Miss Insiders program to let people know what's going on ahead of time in games. So should be really cool. But thank you for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. When we come back, we're going to change speeds to baseball, and we're going to talk about the House settlement and baseball going up to 34 scholarships and how that might be the death of the sport in the NCAA. Just stick around for that. You know, Game Time is your place to get your Ole Miss tickets, you know, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying Ole Miss tickets. Vaught-Hemingway doesn't have really a bad seat. But you can look at every seat, what the view of the field would be from there before you buy the ticket, so you know if it is a good one and one that you can live with. They have the lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, job loss protection. You know, you can take the guesswork out of buying Ole Miss tickets with Game Time. And with this being the most anticipated season in Ole Miss history, I may be able to help you out with tickets as well. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and you have to turn down the volume with all of that screaming and shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you each and every single day to bring you the biggest stories without all of that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, Derek, they started laying out the new roster rules that are associated with the House settlement. Basically, partial scholarships don't exist anymore. Walk-ons do not exist anymore. Everybody that's on the roster is a full scholarship level player. That is the way this works. Now, because of that, baseball is in a very weird spot right now because pretty much 3/4 of the country has been teetering on canceling their college baseball team when the scholarship limit was at 11.7. And we are at a point whenever it gets up to 34 scholarships, it's going to be the SEC, the ACC, maybe some Big 12 schools, but that's really all that can do it. There's not going to be any Dallas Baptist. There's not going to be any Cal State Northridge or Fullerton or any of those schools that's kind of a cute story. Even Oregon State, who's been a power in baseball, who knows how that's going to look moving forward. I think this settlement for baseball in particular, it's a horrible, horrible situation.
Yeah. You know, they've been lobbying for years trying to up that 11.7, right? And they've gone from 0 to 100 basically overnight, it seems like. I know it's been talked about. It's not something that comes to a shock to people inside programs and all that. They knew this stuff was coming. I think the big part about this, though, is not only is it 34 scholarships, that's now your roster limit. You don't get 40 players on a roster anymore. Teams across the SEC are going to end up cutting 6 players per team a year from now. They're going to have to drop that roster limit. You're not going to have those extra arms out of the bullpen, that extra guy on the bench. It's really going to affect your depth more than anything for the high-level programs that are actually able to give that 34 number to begin with. It's going to create a lot less parity in baseball, in a sport that has thrived off parity. It's lived off parity basically its entire existence. You never knew what was going to happen in baseball, regardless if it was, just talking about major league standards. If it's a 110-win team versus a 65-win team, that 65-win team could still win 2 out of 3 because there was at least a little bit of fairness as far as how the rosters were built, a little bit. Now, this way with the 34 scholarships. All these SEC teams, sans maybe Missouri, it wouldn't surprise me if Missouri didn't go 34 scholarships. But if they have 34 players that are getting full scholarships plus NIL money, ACC doing the same thing. Like you said, the Dallas Baptist, the Oregon State, I thought was a great example that you brought up. That is a baseball powerhouse that probably will not be able to afford to do this. Now, you don't have to give out 34 scholarships. That's just your roster limit, and they're allowing that many scholarships for your roster. So they can still have, 13, 14 scholarship players and fill them out with just walk-ons or whatever. If they want to do that, that's the limit. They've just set the limit and the scholarships both at the same number. But it is going to create a big difference in the top half of college baseball and the bottom half of college baseball. Because like you said, not everybody's going to be able to carry these 34 scholarships, pay for the 34 scholarships in a sport that already doesn't make money for 95% of the country too, right? It's a sport that's constantly in the red for most universities to begin with. It's going to be hard for me to think that too many of them are going to keep pouring more money into them to get more scholarships over that 11.7. And look, there's even SEC teams. I say there's some. There's a lot of SEC teams that don't make money in college baseball as well. Like, that's how hard it is to make money in this sport from a program standpoint. So it's going to be really interesting. Kind of like you said, it's a lot of teams have talked about canceling their baseball program over the last several years, especially since COVID hit. There was a big hit to athletic departments when COVID hit, right? And now this is just another one that they're going to have to foot the bill for. It's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, and again, I do not think this is going to affect Ole Miss, other than the fact that Southern Miss is in trouble.
Southern Miss is in trouble, yes. The only way it affects Ole Miss is it's going to hurt their bottom line. There's not going to be any baseball programs in the country that make money anymore when they go to 34. Now it's like 8 to 10 programs that make money across the country. That's probably going to be cut down to zero when you're tripling scholarships. I don't know if you know this or not, Steven. College is expensive. It's not a very cheap thing to do to pay for a college education. When you triple that on your own roster, that all goes towards your bottom line. So it's basically going to wipe out anybody that makes any money at college baseball. But yes, Southern Miss is another team that's going to be affected by this. They've done a great job with the 11.7, going and finding talent, developing talent, using partial scholarships in different places to build a really good roster year in and year out. They're one of the premier G5 programs, if you want to call them that. But yeah, this is going to be a lot different for them now, having to compete against all of these teams with 34 full scholarship players now.
Yeah. And football going up to 105. That's kind of interesting too.
Yeah. But what was the overall roster limit for football? Was it 120?
No, it's 105, period.
Oh, okay. So the roster limit didn't drop in football.
No. It's still that. So basically what this is you were able to sign a certain number of walk-ons, preferred walk-ons.
Yeah.
That took the roster up to the 105 number. It just gave those 20 players scholarships.
All scholarships, yeah. So it just wiped out walk-ons essentially.
Yes. Yeah, walk-ons are basically a thing of the past.
Yeah. Outside of places with the lower college baseball budgets that have to have them to fill out a roster if they even decide to keep the program around. Totally agree with you on this though. It's really going to harm college baseball more than help it.
Yeah, and I do think that we're in a situation they have to do another sports division to where
have to.
Yeah, they have to do it because it's going to be such haves and have-nots, even on the football side of the coin.
Oh yeah. There's going to be a lot of places that can't afford 105 scholarship players, to fund their football program.
Yeah, it's going to be a situation that when Ole Miss plays
Furman,
not Furman, because that's the way it is now. But if you play Georgia Southern, like or Middle Tennessee, those Conference USA level teams on your schedule, that's going to be like playing an FCS team in 5 years. And FCS teams have no business anymore being on the roster. It is at the point where it is not fair to put them on the roster. Not fair to those kids. No, you have to figure out whenever the SEC goes to 9 conference games, which the SEC is going to 9 conference games.
It's going to 9 conference games, yeah.
Whenever that happens, the game that needs to go away is not the USCs of the world. It's the Furmans of the world. Those games need to go away. And what the power conference need to do, if you still want to fund those athletic departments and kind of pay it forward a little bit, play them in the spring game.
Oh, yeah.
A game that doesn't matter. You can get a lot of work in there. You can pay them $500,000 to come to your place, and you're not going to beat up Chattanooga right before the FCS playoffs playing Alabama for a bye game.
Yeah, that's actually a really good idea. Yeah, but I'm 100% with you. Those are the games that got to go when we go to 9 conference games. And it's also not fair to fans to keep playing those games while asking the fans to pay all of this money to come to games, donate to a collective, which I know you've got the revenue sharing and all of that coming as well in the not too distant future, I would think. So that's going to help alleviate a little bit of that. But, you're constantly asking fans to donate, come to games. Tickets aren't cheap. If you're not in the area, then hotels and stuff aren't cheap either. At least give them something good to go watch. So I think it's more fair for the FCS teams to not have to come up here and play. And it's more fair for the fans. Give them a reason to come into your stadium, spend their money, and also help your revenue out that way.
Yeah, and it's got to the point, and everybody's going to say you're not saying something, you're not on the team and all of that. But the only way that they're not going to do it is if it doesn't work. If the money cuts off, they won't do it.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the way that works. And now we're going to give them a little bit of time to get this done and to do right by the fans. But everybody knows me. I'm going to raise holy hell otherwise. And I'm not afraid to say what's on my mind.
Yeah. Man, well, that's why you've been so successful, Steven. That's why people keep coming back every day.
Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Derek Vandygriff joining the show this week, just like he does every week. What do you got going on this weekend, buddy?
Oh, man, I am working. That seems to be all I do anymore now. Outside of doing shows is working. So I'm going to be doing a lot of working this weekend. But outside of that, though, from a show standpoint, we had one go up earlier this week with J.P. Robertson, the new pitcher for Ole Miss from Pearl River Community College. Really interesting player. He had a really good freshman year there. He's from Madison. We did find out throughout this interview that he grew up a State fan. So we were able to get his very first hottie toddy out on the show. So that's recorded, documented for all of time. So you can go back and watch that. And then me and Hitch talked earlier this week about Jackson Dart getting left off the all SEC teams at Media Day. All that happened after we recorded during Media Day week. So we talked about that, a little bit about the college football game too. I've been pretty excited about that whenever I've had a chance to actually sit down and play it throughout work and all that. But we've got other things going.
Before we get out of here, I have an idea. I think if Ole Miss gets through Oklahoma and LSU undefeated and they get to Georgia, they need to wear powder blue helmets with the numbers on the side.
Yes.
Navy jerseys, gray pants.
That would be interesting.
Johnny Vault special.
Yeah,
Johnny Vault special.
I've seen it. It's definitely interesting.
It's in the game, college football. If you want to see what it looks like, you can see it.
I know. Yeah. I've had just about every combination imaginable with Ole Miss on that game. So, but yeah, it's been a ton of fun though. And like I said, me and Hitch have other things in the works too. As soon as they kind of come to fruition, we will send it out to all of y'all. But in the meantime, head over to the SEC After Dark YouTube channel. Check out Ole Miss After Dark. We're trying to put out multiple shows a week if I can ever get off work long enough to do that. So that's kind of in the works, and more stuff coming during football season, more guests lined up. That'll probably start within the next, few weeks or so, getting them lined up and getting them on.
Buddy, you're killing it. I do appreciate it, man. And you have a good day, and I'll talk to you next week, man.
Thanks, buddy. Have a good one.